Historic comeback. Trump wins the White House in political comeback rooted in appeals to frustrated voters. Is Trump's victory a victory or a defeat for Putin? We will look for the answer to this question right now. My name is Iryna Uzlova and this is YouTube War and Politics 24, and our guest today is Yuriy Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, communication instructor at the University of Wisconsin and a country supervisor in Rock Country, Wisconsin. Yuri, I'm glad to see you very much. Hello.
Glad to see you, Iryna. You know, the consistency of our communication provides this nice feeling of consistency in life that you and I chat about things that are happening. That's good. Let's keep doing it.
Let's keep and believe that another day will be happier, and the sun is always bright in any way. And
you know, I gotta say, when I hear these optimistic expressions of support from Ukraine, it warms my heart. Thank you.
Not at all. You're supporting, we feel your support every day during this almost 3 years and even more. So, but let's start our discussion because we have new events and maybe new risks, and maybe we can find new solutions for it. I believe in it. And anyway, Trump pledges no wars during his presidency. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has promised that there will be no wars during his presidency. We had no wars, mentioned Trump, for 4 years. We had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time, but we had no wars. They said he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop the wars. He described his likely triumph as a tremendous victory for democracy and freedom. Our president, Vladimir Zelensky, congratulates Trump on victory and told, "I appreciate President Trump's commitment to the peace through strange approach in global affairs. This is exactly the principle that can practically bring just peace in Ukraine closer. I am hopeful that we will put into action together." Yuri, how do you think? What deal can Trump offer to Putin and Zelensky, and whose interests will this agreement serve? Russian, Ukrainian, or American?
I think that we have reasons to believe that this is going to serve interests of Donald Trump. And that seems to be the pattern that he has established from his first cadence, and is expected to carry into his second cadence. Yes, it is an irony of history that Donald Trump has criticized even earlier Republican administration of George Bush Jr. For being such a warmonger. And in that, Donald Trump has adopted position of far left liberals in the United States who were against Iraq war. Well, a lot of people who were against the Iraq war, against many of the things that were heralded by leader of Republican Party, Republican president. But Donald Trump, made a point of highlighting that he disagreed with that approach and that policy, putting him already in a different camp than Dick Cheney, even if not personality conflicts, but just policy-wise, because Reagan Republicans were the ones that believed this through being engaged and showing that strength. But what Donald Trump was offering during the campaign is the threat of World War III against with Russia, and therefore demanding the authority as president of the United States to negotiate directly with Putin and with others, dictators, in order to further American interests in so far as it's been presented to us. To think that Donald Trump is going to offer something that is going to benefit Ukraine, I guess it depends on your definition of benefit and Ukraine. because Donald Trump is going to, he already indicated that there will be no more aid. He is not interested in more aid. Mike Johnson, Speaker, who is very likely to remain Speaker or may not remain a Speaker. Republican conference could plunge into indecision if they decide to argue about their Speaker, in which case they will not be able to do anything for who knows what period of amount of time and what consequences this kind of inaction can lead to. So we are entering very perilous times where to expect American government to be a proactive player in maintaining our existing commitments is unrealistic. I think that's what the statement that's what Secretary Blinken has spoken about, that we are making these commitments with the understanding that there are elections in the United States. And we had elections in the United States, and elections have consequences. So I think, considering past history, considering that Donald Trump equates removing American forces from their position, in Syria with supporting Kurds or anywhere else as an anti-war agenda, then there's other things he can do that will fit in with his electorate. And at this point, he has a certain feeling, I think, of a mandate. Let's be clear about this, because when we have very close elections in the United States, there's argument about to what extent the president really has the mandate to govern from the whole country's point of view, because it was so close, so almost. And in this case, we see that it was not almost. We see that this was a clear victory by Donald Trump. The Democrats are not denying it, and that is a fact. That is, in elections, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And there's going to be peaceful transfer of power because Democrats believe in that. How that situation is going to develop and what kind of strength and peace through strength Donald Trump will exercise. We've heard of some demilitarized zones. We've heard of different offers that can be brought to bear, but it is clear that in this situation, Ukraine is not going to be sitting at any table in any position of strength. This is unfortunate reality to me, which for everyone who's been supportive of Ukraine for years is a terrifying proposition. That brings us to the point of what can be done now. Because right now, President Biden is still president of the United States, and he can follow Ambassador McFaul's suggestion, for instance, and finally give Ukrainians that permission to use long-range weapons inside Russia, at least to show that this is not going to be answered with a nuclear escalation. Because according to Ambassador McFaul, who I consider to be a very reasonable person, Putin would not start a nuclear war with 2 months before Trump comes to power. So assumes power and presidency in the United States. The response, interestingly enough, immediate response from Republicans is that this is only just showing clearly the intent, and this is really an attempt to drag the United States into World War III before the next president has a chance to do anything, which has some merit as well. So I think that there's some very difficult choices that are laying in front of President Biden, who has an amazing legacy that is going to be viewed very differently now because of what happened this past Tuesday, November 5th.
Current president of Russian Federation, Putin, he calls himself president, but we understand that he's illegal, in fact. And ex-president of Russian Federation, Dmitry Medvedev, and other representatives of the Russian elites, so-called, secretly congratulate Trump on his victory. Why it was secretly, and how do you think, is Putin happy about Trump's victory, or is he afraid of him? And can Trump give ultimatum to Putin?
It is hard to imagine how Donald Trump can be demanding anything of Vladimir Putin. Simply watching footage from 2018 meeting in Helsinki, which we are now almost guaranteed to see a repeat of, is enough to send shivers through bones of experienced analysts. I'm thinking of Hill, the Fiona Hill, who nearly was thinking about fainting, essentially, pretending to faint, just to stop the embarrassing situation that was occurring between President Trump and so-called President Putin. And that is a reality that we need to accept. I think that there is different ways of dealing with it, and I think that there are ways of dealing with any situation. But first, we have to be open-eyed. Now, it is interesting that in the United States, voters were very open-eyed about what apparently we decided to support as people in the United States to vote for, and because Democrats did everything they could to make it very clear about what the agenda was, that the Project 2025 and other ways in which likely Trump administration is going to curtail all sorts of rights in the United States was something that people decided to embrace. So with that in mind, I think somebody like strong man like Putin might be somebody that these people might even appreciate. And so we are standing at a very precarious position in history, and to expect that Donald Trump is going to present an ultimatum to Vladimir Putin it's almost impossible to it's hard to imagine, and it's impossible to imagine that he would stick to it. Unfortunately, I feel that we have reasons to suspect that President Trump would find whatever offer President Putin decided to make to be acceptable and a good enough. And I only hope that the level of disorganization and chaos that is now staring us in the face in the next at least 4 years will not lead to such serious loss of territory as I'm thinking of Ukraine and its revolution of 2014 and the resulting annexation of Crimea. When your house is on fire and your neighbor runs in and steals your stuff. And I wonder about what could be happening to the United States in the future, because as far as apocalyptic scenarios, the possibilities are almost unlimited. Of how things could unwind and present themselves, in which case, if there is trouble in the United States brewing because there is a possibility of deporting millions of people using military as one of the potential ideas discussed in this election campaign, if that comes to pass, we will have such strong, I think, tensions within the country that not only we will not care about Europe, we will not care about anything, including starting with Ukraine, but we will, hopefully not lose any territory to some Russian so-called president sitting around and waiting for another country to head into a potential tailspin to grab some territory, because that Alaska was purchased fair and square, and it belongs to America. So don't you, Vladimir Putin, even think about it.
But if we can imagine, and we understand that Putin doesn't need negotiations in any way, he only needs war, and war lets him to keep his authority in Russian Federation. But if Trump calls to Putin and says about the negotiations, and Putin will say, no, I don't want any negotiations, and that's all. Maybe then Trump will give us tomahawks or long-range missiles and all permissions for it, or he will press us to capitulations.
I think the latter is much more likely than the former. I think that lack of military aid, as well as potentially the aid that was used to replenish Ukrainian budgets that allows to pay salaries and those things, if they're not there, what choice is present? The choice is, at that point, I feel like becomes whether Vladimir Putin is willing to settle for part of Ukrainian territory, or is he willing to try to battle through all of Ukrainian territory, regardless of the cost that it may incur to him, even without American aid, as it is, such small as it is right now. And I think that that's going to be the choice that so far we're seeing Putin take one direction on that, and that is not the direction of even sitting at the table of negotiations. You know, he's not sitting there waiting for anybody. And after this election, he is not going to be. Putin's position has been significantly strengthened. I think that's pretty clear. And to expect Trump in this situation to give any additional aid to Ukraine in order to help Ukraine balance out the equation of strength with Putin in order to secure a long-lasting peace, unfortunately, I don't know that this train will stop at that station.
The Wall Street Journal reported Trump defeats Harris, marking history comeback. This phrase, history comeback, we see in all articles, it seems to me. As Trump says, he will save America and make it great again. And we understand that this phrase is regular for him. Let's listen to Trump for 1 minute and then we'll discuss.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
On the other hand, Time magazine called Trump's victory a sentence for the American people. So, Yuri, tell me please, who is right, Trump or Time?
Well, time will tell if Trump is right. But I think that we are looking at a situation where we have a country where hundreds of people need healing right now. So those words, I appreciate them even being said, because it is acknowledging the fact that our country needs to heal. Whether Donald Trump is capable of healing is this remains very much hopefully, well, hardly a question, I guess would be more correct to say, because he said that he wants to put, for instance, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of health care, and especially women's health care, because he feels so passionate about it. This is something that's going to hardly go a long way towards healing anybody. And I think that it is really up to Donald Trump to decide what decisions to make, because he can choose to do things that will heal this country, or he can do things that will not heal this country. He, as future, or as a president-elect, has a tremendous amount of influence of how this country heals. I remember that during his first cadence and first term, We had protests. We had a lot of problems, and things that how do I say, they scarred our society, and they caused more hurt, and really it would be nice to heal, but apparently maybe healing is not what the electorate wants. Maybe healing is not where the trend is right now. Maybe the trend is different, because we see that it is young males, it is Latino males that have propelled Trump perhaps to victory. Perhaps propelled Trump to victory, but we're one of his very crucial groups that voted for him. I don't know that these people are particularly interested in healing either. So I think that we are standing on a precipice, and hopefully there will be some people around, frankly, Donald Trump that will help. But it is challenging to, it's hard for me to dare to think so. Having observed the campaign, having just communicated briefly with the reporter who covered the campaign, and seeing to what extent they're disinterested in in being involved with other countries in general. It wasn't even about Ukraine anymore. Their approach and their worldview is so much bigger and so more vast than just Ukraine. It is potentially terrifying, which means that those people that will be concerned about future will continue to speak up and stand up, and others will not. We saw that Washington Post did not endorse anybody for president. I can't say that I'm a fan of newspapers' endorsements. I think that personally, as a local elected official, I question the need for a newspaper to put their fingers on the scale and help one candidate or another. I feel like being journalists puts newspaper in a different function. But that being aside, it's we are all going to be tested, and this sentence, as Time magazine said, can I don't know that anybody will let us out early for good behavior.
The New York Times tell us Donald Trump returns to power, ushering a new era of uncertainty. He played on fears of immigrants and economic worries to defeat Vice President Kamala Harris. His victory signals the advent of isolationism, sweeping tariffs, and score setting. In which topics and appeals did Trump beat Harris? Why did Harris fail? And why does Harris keep silence?
I think that if Vice President Harris is scheduled to give a speech, so I anticipate that question will be addressed. It is understandable that she took time. I think that there's a lot of people feeling very emotional right now, and it's a very challenging time. So she is allowed and entitled to take the time that she needs to gather the information, to make sure that before she concedes that there's no possible way that she could be winning or tie, just she has to make sure. But outside of that, we see that she will concede if, in fact, she loses officially, because that's what I think Democrats do. They follow, this is what's so interesting about and unique about the situation, is that you have hundreds of people handing over direction of a country that's going to go in a very opposite direction peacefully through an election. It appears that, perhaps the argument about the democracy versus authoritarian states was not made clearly, loudly enough. Even people that voted in blue states said that the issue number one for them was democracy, but it was not enough. And so there is a question about what happened with the campaign, and how did Kamala Harris lost and how did Donald Trump win? Because yes, it brings an era of uncertainty that's used, another way. It's another word for chaos. And that is what Trump was advertising. It would be unfair to say that we should be surprised. This is not a surprise. So on the other hand, there was a lot of, talk and worry about the condition of President Biden. And after a bad debate performance, causing Democrats to rise up and demand change. And we don't know now whether Joe Biden would have won if he remained president, or if he would have lost worse than Kamala Harris did. We don't have that. We have supposed polls that predict, but as we see, reality can be different. But this is dreadful, in my opinion, and very dangerous to position of women in our country, in the United States, because for the struggles that women have made, both in terms of the rights to their own body, and as far as breaking the glass ceiling and finally becoming a leader of the United States, which seems like every other country, except for Russia, has elected a leader at some point who was a female, but the United States are still yet to make that break. And having seen Kamala Harris lose and having seen Hillary Clinton lose, I'm concerned that next the vice presidential ticket from Democratic Party is going to feature two older white males, because that seems like that's working, or it worked against Trump when Joe Biden ran in 2020. So we are going to be seeing a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, a lot of sorting out. But there's also a question of what is going to be happening in the world at the same time as the Democratic Party, as people of the United States try to get a grasp on this new reality that we are that we're looking to be living in. Mm-hmm. We're moving into this reality, whether it likes us or not. And this is going to be a big challenge. And I think that there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we will get them answered.
So will Democrats as a whole rethink their approach to politics and voters?
They should. They should, because something is not working. Democrats are upset. It's like when you're a scientist and you design a tool and you do something and then it doesn't work. You go, wait a minute, what's wrong? Is there a problem here? And so critically minded people are feeling like we got fooled into some kind of a feeling like everything was going well. Who created this feeling? On the other hand, there was a tremendous grassroots the operation of knocking on doors and getting voters out and giving rights, all those things that Democrats are strong at, the ground game, and we see the result. So there's a lot of lessons that need to be made, and I'm confident the Democratic Party will try to attempt to answer it. And if it's not the party itself, then certainly everybody in our country is trying to figure out, because while I may have been mistaken about thinking who is going to win this election, I certainly do not feel alone in that. And now, again, it's just a matter of saying, okay, so that didn't happen. Now we have to make this work because, YOLO.
You mentioned about Vice President. 40-year-old U.S. Senator J.D. Vance won the election with Donald Trump. He presented him too on his speech after victory, and he will become U.S. Vice President next January. A former Marine who served in Iraq, a lawyer and venture capitalist, Vance has been vocal in his opposition to U.S. military aid to Ukraine and has emerged as one of the biggest isolationists in the USA Republican Party. Yuri, is J.D. Vance a disaster man?
I think J.D. Vance is the future on some level of showing where the Republican Party at least is headed right this moment. If they've suffered a crushing defeat, this would have been a reminder to them that such people like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump do not win elections, and that's what politics is based on. But if they win elections, that means that their behavior is the model for copying. That means, and in addition, the age of J.D. Vance and the age of Donald Trump makes one reasonably worried about how long it's going to be before we're going to have President J.D. Vance. And considering his statements on a variety of topics, that presents a whole new level of questions, none of which have really, positive answers. It's amazing because J.D. Vance is somebody who insulted so many women in the United States, like all at once, by talking about childless cat ladies, women who have no children, but they have cats. It was such an insensitive statement. And then he ended the campaign by calling Kamala Harris trash. It's just so many things that were crass in his delivery, and then the voters supported it. So perhaps me as an instructor of rhetoric will have to adjust my rhetorical standards for what is acceptable in a speech, because of course university is not politics and different requirements, but there's a certain need, I feel, that material reflects realities of life. When I talk about logical fallacies and I explain that that's wrong to use a logical fallacy, it's like using a cheat code to win a game. For instance, by attacking the opponent instead of the issue. That's called a logical fallacy, and that you're not supposed to do that. But on the other hand, if you have a winning result, how do you explain to students that this is a logical? It seems like we need to review things. But I tell you, I had the same feeling in 2016, and it took all of us in the United States a little while, a few days, few weeks, few months. But we recovered, and I think it's really important to believe in America, because I do agree that America is an idea. And as such, I believe that we will persevere and we will be victorious, and we will show the world the way. And as such, I'm always proud to be an American, even on this difficult day, because things did not go as I wished when it comes to politics. And we're gonna just, we're gonna stand up, and we're gonna walk our walk another day, and this too shall pass.
American-style monomajority. The Republican Party has won a majority in the USA Senate for the first time in 4 years, and Republicans secured 51 seats in the 100-seat Senate. So what are the risks that control over the Senate and the House of Representatives could lead to the usurpation of power?
Iryna, I just tell you that this too shall pass, and you pull this on me. I go, wow, you're right. It is, when you think about the situation in particulars, it is rather dire because we have all branches of government not just in control of one party, but essentially one person. And at least the level of influence that is exuded and the level of animosity and threat, not to mention electoral prowess displayed, is going to mean that at least until the next elections in 2 years, when we're going to have next elections for Congress, and historically this is where the opposition party is supposed to make great leaps back and come back, and until then we're going to have to deal with the fact that all three branches of government are in one party's control. And that's going to be an intense experience that I'm not even sure Americans are prepared for. We shall see, because we have plenty of smart people who are involved in using the tools. As Liz Cheney said, we have to protect our Constitution. And our Constitution does give us some powers and does give us some abilities to defend ourselves and our country and our Constitution. So this is going to be not an easy battle, and not an easy war. And to imagine that we as Americans have placed our country in this situation and placed this world in this situation makes me feel really disappointed, because there's such, I feel, a responsibility on us. America is such a special country that can do so much in this world, and we as voters in the United States had such a responsibility on our shoulders that I clearly don't feel that we fulfilled that responsibility. And I will say that for people who are thrilled that Donald Trump won and who think that this means good things for Ukraine, I accept your joy because I know it is your joy for Ukraine, and I share that joy. I just don't share your expectation and your hopes for this particular the person who is going to be the 47th president of the United States. But I think it's important to remain optimistic. So we will get through this.
Agree. We have many challenges, we have many risks, but we stay optimistic despite everything, Yuriy. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Thank you so much for this conversation, for your position and for your support. And see you next week. Be careful.
Same to you, Iryna.
Goodbye. Thank you. Guys, thank you for watching us. Thank you for joining. I remind you that Yuriy Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, communication instructor at the University of Wisconsin and a county supervisor in Rock Country, Wisconsin, was with us today together. And my name is Iryna Uzlova. See you next week. Goodbye.